Good morning. Happy Sunday. I hope a few of us jump on for today's Sunday chat because have I got something to share with you. I hope that you have had a good weekend so far. We seem to have lost some of our sunlight, but I think it's creeping back in. It really does feel like spring, and I think we're going to have a Sunday chat about spring energy and how to harness that and use it effectively very, very soon. That's exciting. I love spring. Don't you? I mean, don't you really? So recently we talked about some disempowerment issues, and it got me to kind of thinking about is something called the cycle of disempowerment or circle of disempowerment. I can't remember which C word they use, but I wanted to talk to you about that today because, as you know, I'm really big on creating awareness. Of course, what you do with it is up to you. The whole idea of I'm aware of something is different from I know it. And I think we've talked about that before. I know about stuff. I know about writing in my journal. I know about meditation. I know this stuff. But if I'm not actually practicing it and doing it on the regular, I only know about it. You know what I'm saying? But in this case, this particular idea is really a concept that informs other ideas and how you perceive things, because perception is everything. And this particular concept around disempowerment is relational, so you know perception is everything. How we perceive our relationships is huge. One of the big, this is kind of a twofold issue. One of the big things that people who feel powerless often don't realize is the issue really comes back to a trust factor and a responsibility factor. And I know I touched on the responsibility previously, but it also does come back to trust. And it's trust in other people, but it's also trust in ourselves. And you'll see how this all kind of meshes together by the time, I'm hoping you see it anyway, by the time I'm done explaining this. But I just want to sort of pull back a little bit and talk for a second about trust. Because trust is big. Trust is big. It's big in terms of how we relate to other people. It's big in terms of how we're going to relate to other people and how we expect people to relate to us. But it's also important to understand that that relational trust is super important to our own self-worth and self-esteem as well. If we don't trust ourselves, and sometimes that is the hardest place to put our trust. So I just want to sort of step back from that. And like our belief system, our trust is created, not our trust, but our beliefs around trust and our ability to trust and how we trust is formed when we're very young children, really even starting in infancy. If your basic needs are met as a child, you're going to be more trusting. If your basic needs are not met, or if they're quashed, if you're told they're stupid or you're reacted to in a negative way when you have needs, your ability to trust is going to be affected by that. I mean, that only makes sense, right? You're being taught how to react and how to be in trust. So if you, after we sort of do this little chat today, find yourself being pulled to that, I invite you to really take a look at your beliefs around trust. And I think you'll find that there might be some information there that is going to help inform the rest of this. So the cycle of disempowerment, keeping in mind what disempowerment is, right? There is no real version of disempowerment that happens unless you allow it. So this concept can inform your own relations, but it also can help you if you're a parent, right? Notice and help your children manage each other's relations. If you're a teacher, if you're a coach, coaches and therapists fall into this cycle accidentally quite a bit. And I'll just actually jump right in there, because where they fall into it, there's 3 parts to this cycle. And it's cyclical. It goes around and it feeds itself. The first part I'll talk about is the one for teachers, parents, often spouses. One of the two will be the rescuer. You know, other names for the rescue might be the hero or the fixer. These are the people who help other people, and we like it. It feels good, and it's just, I mean, it doesn't feel like a bad thing, right? You go and you fix something for someone else, you take care of them, you help them with their problems. It's really easy to get into this role as rescuer because it feels good. You get really validated by this role. If I can give you a word of comfort or some advice that fixes things for you, now I'm feeling pretty good about myself, right? Look what I did. Look what how I helped you. And I'll probably get validation from you as well. Like thank yous and oh my gosh, what would I do without you? Right? There are some drawbacks to this, because if you're a rescuer, it also means that you have a degree of judgment involved in what you're doing. And what that judgment, let me jump and I'll explain the 3, because that might actually make this make more sense. So the other part of this is the victim. So if I'm coaching someone, I have to be quite mindful of this, because if someone's coming to me with the victim mentality and they want me to fix it for them, that's not what I do. Not even a little bit. And it's really easy to slide into that role, though, at times. But the victim, they look for rescuers. They have no responsibility. They've given that away. They're somebody else needs to come and rescue me. The thing is, everybody has stuff. Everybody does. And no one's stuff is comparable to someone else's stuff. It's all relative. Hurt is hurt. It doesn't matter. There's a saying, you can drown in 7 feet of water, or you can drown in 30 feet of water. You're still dead. Right? It doesn't really matter how big your hurt is. Hurt is hurt. Everyone has stuff. It's not about having stuff. If you're alive and you're breathing, eventually, or even right now, you're going to have stuff. What matters is what you do with it. It's your response. And a victim's response is to look for a rescuer to fix it. And you can see right there, I'm very certain how that gives away the power, because 1, they're disavowing responsibility for any of their actions, any of their life problems, any of the issues in their life. And they're just giving that power over their own choices and their own life to someone else. I mean, you want to talk about the concept of giving away your power. Hello, that's exactly what it is. So we've got the victim, and we've got the rescuer, and then you get the bad guy. Or I don't really like to go with the bad guy as much. I kind of like the idea of the blamed. That's not a big popular version of it, so if you happen to be looking more into this, you might not see that word, but I like to be called, this section to be called the blame, because sometimes the blame isn't on a person, it's on a situation, or a thing that is blamed. But most of them, what I've read about, and the teachers that I've had call it the bad guy, or one even called it the perpetrator. Very formal. And the perpetrator is just the person who's getting the blame. I mean, that's a really simple version. There's not, there needs to be someone getting blamed. Otherwise, I'd have to take responsibility for what's happening, or at least my part in what's happening. I can't just go, you're the reason my life sucks. It's, you know what I mean? So you can see how all of this would circle back to each other. Now here's one of the problems when it comes to disempowerment. If I'm a rescuer if I'm in this role, and we can all be different roles for different people, absolutely, all in the same day. So this isn't like, there's Bonnie the coach, the rescuer, and that's it. I mean, there are probably still days where I have victim come up, and I'm just, and I know there are, because there are days when I'm like, oh, being a grown-up is really hard, and I have that moment. Sure, absolutely. And I'm sure many points in life, we've all been the bad guy. We've all been the person who's blamed, the blamed. But when we're in a rescuer role, there is a certain amount of judgment that comes into play, and and the victim plays into this. They kind of buy into this too, where it becomes the rescuer's up here, and the victim's down here, lesser than, weaker than. And that goes for the blamed as well. The victim believes themselves to be weaker than or less than the blamed, the situation or the person. It doesn't really matter. They don't feel like they have any control, any power, anything they can do about it, which we know is not true, right? But this circle feeds itself, because quite often if you get caught up as a rescuer for the victim, they're telling you their sob story, right? And I know that seems really harsh, but they tell you their sob story. You're like, oh, you poor thing. You hear that judgment? Let me fix it. Let me help you. I'll take care of it. And they also start the blame, and it feeds itself, and the power is lost for the person who should be taking responsibility, for the victim, who plays that role. Their power is dissipated. So it's putting themselves in a lower, weaker position, when we know that if you want to be empowered, or you want to empower someone else, so teachers, coaches, parents, spouses, really, if you recognize this role somewhere in your life where you're playing, the rescuer, you have to give back responsibility. You can't keep that. Not everything is your responsibility. I know you can probably fix it. Maybe you could even do it better. But you're stealing someone else's power by doing that. You're not really helping. Now, this, to clarify, I am not talking about when someone is ill or unable to do things, right? I'm talking when they are able and they just don't want to. Or you find it easier to just do it yourself, or you feel pity for them and you feel bad for them. That is no place to start taking people's responsibility. It's just not. It's not helpful. The victim, if you recognize your role as a victim somewhere in your life, acknowledge it. Don't beat yourself up for it, because you know what? Most people, in fact, many coaches and therapists can get trapped into this role and don't even realize it. So do not beat yourself up. But if you recognize yourself somewhere and you're going, yeah, so-and-so, every time there's a problem, if I have a friend who, whenever they have an issue, they have a very wealthy friend, they just go and ask them for money, and their friend goes, yeah, sure, no problem. And I'm like, but you're grown up. We're not in dire straits. You just want to do something. To me, I'm like, what? Or, kids who are like, there's something I want to do, but my friends are doing this, and da-da-da-da, and help them sort it out by letting them figure it out. Let them sort it out. And again, this isn't, like if they've tried sorting it out and something really bad is happening to them, you don't let them flounder forever. But they should be part of the solution at the very least. And a lot of spouses have this. My favorite. I can't cook. I can't do this. I can't do that. My spouse has to. What? Or my favorite. This is my little feminism coming out. Sorry, guys. When people say that they're helping their spouse clean the house, I'm like, you don't live there. You know what I mean? But when you find yourself in that role and you recognize that maybe just at least some of the time in one area or more that you have that victim mentality where you're looking for someone to come help you, someone to come figure it out for you, someone to come just take care of this shit already, and you're not willing to step up, you're giving away your power. You want it back? Responsibility. You've got to step up, and it sucks. I get it. I do. I totally get it, because being a grown-up is sometimes really, really hard. But if you want to be empowered and you want to be confident and self-assured and self-loving, it all comes from accountability to yourself and responsibility for the shit that's going on in your life, good or bad or neutral. And it doesn't just mean accepting and dealing, it also means, setting the boundaries, walking away from things that are not healthy for you, even when you don't like it, or when it's hard. It's trusting yourself. And you can see here we come back around to why I brought up trust in the first place. Many of us have been taught, especially women, have been taught not to trust their internal GPS. We've been taught not to. We've been given so much negative reaction. We've had gaslighting. We've had people shutting down our wants and needs. We've had, just so many lessons from the media about how even how we look can be wrong, let alone what we think, what we want, what we desire is wrong, that we often are so confused within ourselves and we don't trust our own guts anymore. And I think that's where we need to start. Listening to that, trusting that, honoring that. And once you start working there, that self-trust piece, you're going to find that the victim doesn't feel as good as it used to. And you're going to want to take responsibility. You're going to want to get stuff done. And the truth is, that is the only way. And I think it's really about maturity, because maturity comes from taking responsibility. Empowerment comes from taking responsibility. Disempowerment is a choice. Trust, how we trust, is a choice. And you might have a myriad of beliefs around that. A lot of what I do as a coach is help people uncover and clarify old beliefs that are, weighing them down in certain areas. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, 80% of the time, that's all it takes to change that belief, to get rid of it and replace it with something more appropriate to what you want out of life, is just really getting clear on it and seeing it for what it is and looking at it in the daylight. So, my friends, that was my rant for today. Wasn't really too much of a rant, but being aware of that circle and sort of exploring your own relationships to others, to other things, and to yourself within that concept can really open your eyes and make you see things from a different perspective, and possibly see where you are choosing to disempower yourself and what you can do about it. So, once again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to give you an answer or help direct you to an answer for yourself. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on this little circle of disempowerment and what takeaways that you had from that today. And I will remind you that it is Sunday and it is the start of a brand new, beautiful week, spring week no less, full of juicy energy that you can grab onto and use for whatever it is that you want to start planting, which we are going to talk about in subsequent Sunday chats, because the energy is coming. It's building right now. It's pretty exciting. And this is also your reminder that in this beautiful big new week, you can handle whatever it is that life throws at you, because you've got this and you've got it inside of you to take care of whatever you need to take care of. So the short version of this whole video. Empowerment comes from responsibility. If you got that, you got this video. And the last one, actually. And with that, I'm going to love you and leave you and see you next time. Mwah. Bye for now.